Welcome to the Inclusions Effect. Stories of hope where hearts connect. Side effects may include joy, advocacy, and inclusion too. You're listening to The Inclusion Effect, sharing love, strength, and respect. Side effects may include joy, advocacy, and inclusion for me and you.
Okay, hello and welcome to The Inclusion Effect. I'm Anna, and I'm here to talk with guests and with all of you about disability advocacy, inclusion, and the ups and downs of navigating a world that frankly isn't always built for the disability community. Today's guest here with me is Kris. Kris is the founder of Advocates Empowered. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Hi, friends. I'm Kris. Nice to meet all of you. I use they, he pronouns, and today I'm wearing a orange shirt and black pants, and my hair is all swooped to the side, and I've got a cute little cup here that says choose compassion with espresso, ready to go.
And we are doing an in-person podcast interview, which is new to me, and we are in my little podcast closet. So
Love it.
Cozy quarters, but I think it'll work.
Coming out of the closet just to get right back in there.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, I love it. But do you want to share a little bit about, your role in the disability community, how you got to where you are, your backstory?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've chatted a little bit about this on the meeting that we had.
Yes.
But yeah, I was born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya. So that's where my origin story began. So I was born in Nairobi Hospital, and my parents were pastors and missionaries, and moved to Kenya in their when they were 19, 20 years old.
From the U.S.
From the U.S. I was born there, and I lived there until I was right before I turned 18. So that was home for me. I loved growing up in Kenya. It was really beautiful, and the culture of the Kenyan people is so warm and welcome and inviting, and your neighbors, and community exists in a way that it doesn't in other spaces that I've lived and visited. But it was kind of tricky because I didn't realize it was tricky until I got older, and I was like, hold on, things are coming up. But as a minority in Kenya, I oftentimes was the only white person in the space that I was in outside of my family. I just wrote on my blog I wrote about my first memory, and it's 100 children staring at me. And that's the first thing, my first coming online moment was my first day in Sunday school. And I'm sitting on the front row, and 100 kids are staring at me because I was the only white kid in the crowd. I was the pastor's daughter at the time. I'm trans, so I don't identify as that anymore. But that was so just feeling very not excluded, but outside of the norm, and just feeling very targeted in many ways. I was very sexually harassed growing up. I was stalked. There was a lot of danger that I and my family had to go through that I thought was perfectly normal. My therapist had to convince me that I had PTSD.
No, everybody grows up like that.
I'm like, but doesn't everyone have to run into a corner because a gunman entered the building looking for your family?
Oh my god!
Isn't that doesn't everybody have to go through that? I remember my therapist asked me at one point, she was like, Kris, if you had a daughter and your daughter had to grow up the way that you did, what would you think about that? And I was like, I mean, yeah, it would suck, but she'd be fine.
You're like, I'm fine.
That's literally was my answer. I was like, I mean, it would be hard, but it'd be fine. And she was like, no. She's like, your brain was not meant to endure what you endured. And so I am diagnosed with CPTSD, both from religious trauma and from just things that I face and insecurities and disabilities growing up in that way. But yeah, I moved to the States when I was right before my 18th birthday. But growing up in Kenya also exposed me to, I would say, the extremes, right? So I was exposed to extreme poverty, extreme injustices, extreme exclusion. I remember once when I was kind of the start of my disability passion story. But when I was in my early teens, I went to the island of Lamu. It's right off the coast of Kenya, and beautiful, very like luxury resort, sort of like tourist destination. But Old Town Lamu is where the locals live, and I went there, and I had like walked the island a day or two. It was tiny, and I remember asking my friend, I was like, I've been here for 2 days and I have not seen one visibly disabled person. I haven't noticed anyone in a wheelchair. I haven't noticed anyone blind. I haven't noticed anyone with cerebral palsy. I haven't seen anyone who's paraplegic. And surely I can't be in an island where there's 100% like able-bodied people. Like, obviously we know about non-apparent disabilities, but I was like, even as a kid, I remember just being drawn to where are they and looking for that population. And my friend looked at me and he said, oh no, there are so many disabled people on this island, but you will never see them, because if a child is born with an apparent disability, they're either literally thrown into the ocean or are kept locked in their homes, sometimes literally chained to their beds.
Wow.
And I was like, why? And he was like, well, in this particular society, people with disabilities like that are considered cursed. Like there's a curse on your family somehow, and so it is manifesting in this disabled human being. And so because of that, no schools existed. So there's nowhere for the kids to go. And then once the community knows that you have a child with disabilities, then the family will be rejected. The parents won't be able to get a job. So there's nowhere for the child to go. There's no schools for them. There's no inclusion for them. So they are literally locked in their houses, and many of them die at a young age.
So that is a great segue to the business that you founded. Yeah. But I do want to say I just posted recently on my social medias about how I don't want anybody that's listening to this to think, oh, well, that's just one place that this happens. There might be a culture there that's specific to that, helps that feeling, that exclusion foster. The life expectancy of individuals who have Down syndrome has tripled since just the 80s, more than tripled actually. And a lot of that is because of advancements in science and things like that. But a big reason is because, one, until 1984, physicians, doctors were allowed to just refuse to feed individuals, newborns, infants who had Down syndrome or other disabilities where they deemed low quality of life would be their future, just not give them food. And then they did not have to perform life-saving heart surgeries on them. 50% of all people with Down syndrome were born with heart defects. And so they would just let them die, basically. And then if they did make it past that, just because of luck, because my daughter would be dead if she was left alone without health interventions when she was young. She had heart issues, so she'd be dead. So if they make it past that, though, then they would be put away into institutions where they were neglected and not cared for in the quality of care that they need to thrive. And so they were dying at younger ages. And so obviously that skewed the statistics.
Right.
Now, the fact that they're just simply living past infancy, that they're just being taken care of, has drastically increased life expectancy.
Yeah.
So that definitely, that being on a small island, like, made it really visible and obvious to you. But that is something that's been happening all over the world, I guess. Yes, is my point.
Exactly. And this is what we don't talk about enough. Mm-hmm. But one thing I always caveat with this story is this, number one, is one tiny little island on a massive continent. And a lot of people love to think of Africa as a country. It is not. It is a continent, and it is diverse. It is wealthy. It is rich. It is incredibly educationally forward driven. But the reason that these sorts of things exist in some cultures in Africa is primarily due to colonization. Because pre-colonization, the way that people with disabilities were thought about was not this way. This is new. Because of Western colonization, bringing Christianity, bringing their own stereotypes. I'm actually doing a session on this in a little bit, in like a month or two, about indigenous perspectives on queer and neurodivergence before colonization. So for instance,
like two spirits.
Yes, so like two spirits, exactly. So like in one indigenous tribe in the U.S., there's over 17 different words to express gender identity.
Wow.
In Western Africa, the Yoruba, I believe, I hope that's correct, the tribe that I'm thinking of, for folks who have, and this is from Janet, Lovett Jallow. There we go, Lovett Jallow, amazing author, did this work, and tribes in Western Africa would view people who had like repetitive echolalia, like speech and things like that, who would just like repeat. They were oftentimes storytellers. That was their role in the tribal community. Oh, you need to remember XYZ, go ask so and so, and boom, they have the information, because that was their skill set. So they would actually be included as the like community librarians, the historians, the storytellers, people who have like high empathy, who have like emotional, like like what we would consider meltdowns or things like that. Those people were oftentimes considered healers, because they were so attuned to people's emotions, and they could therefore be put into an environment where they were actually able to take those skills and use them in a way that they weren't trying to be put into a box and stuck in corporate America.
So why don't you tell us about Advocates Empowered?
Yeah, so Advocates Empowered is the organization that I started because I had never been in corporate America before. When I moved to the States, I went straight to college, and then when I was in college, worked at a nonprofit. The nonprofit was in Memphis, focusing specifically on reducing infant mortality and child hunger. When I first started going to therapy, my mom asked me why I wasn't just praying more. Like she was like, I don't understand why you're taking medication. Like for what? So the idea of therapy, medication, all of that was just complete no. And was not looked upon in any good way. Going through all of that, I decided I need to leave this space. And the only way I knew how to leave without facing the Christian shutout of the shaming and the exposure and the you lose all your community and your friends. What if I moved to New York and got into NYU? No one would like fault me for that. So I applied to NYU. I moved to New York, and got into corporate America during COVID. So that's a huge part of this lore. Oh my gosh, I have a degree in special education, and I taught in Memphis for several years before moving to New York. And I was like, the same kids that have all of this support from kindergarten through college, that support goes away once they enter corporate. That does not exist at all. They are used to, and we do have built-in special education teachers and advocates and like a whole group of people that are there to, number one, ensure that the child has what they need. But number two, if you're a really great special education teacher, you're also working with the homeroom teachers to say like, hey, here are more inclusive strategies. Here are ways that you could like involve this student. And so I wanted to essentially do that same thing, but for companies. So Advocates Empowered essentially is my answer to what I experienced in corporate, which was no space for neurodivergent employees, very little inclusion for those who were outside of what society views as normal. And the further away you moved with that, then the less and less opportunity you have. So with Advocates Empowered, I essentially work with organizations to help them know how to actually empower marginalized groups. And then I work with individuals, especially around self-advocacy skills. So I've been able to do a lot of like workshops and things like that, but essentially I help organizations. I'm like their accessibility guide, sort of. So from the way that they are planning their meetings, to the way they're hiring their folks, to the way that they are doing their performance reviews, to their policies, their guidelines, I come in and I help that be more inclusive for people who are neurodivergent and people with disabilities. So that is kind of essentially, I took my passion for disability, my background in education, my lived experience as a neurodivergent and trans person in the workplace, and I meshed it all together. And the last part that was missing, because I was like, well, there's so many people right now who are talking about accessibility in the workplace. It's becoming a more popular topic. But the thing that I saw that so many people were not talking about and were missing was the idea of intersectionality, because so many folks talk about disability as a standalone concept. You cannot talk about disability as a standalone concept. And so I'm constantly helping people understand how a white person experiences disability is going to be different than the way a Black person will, or a person from Latino culture, or a queer disabled person versus a straight disabled person. We have to think about age, body ability and dynamic, background, race, sexual orientation. All of those things make a difference and matter when we talk about accessibility. So I really focus on helping people understand that aspect as well, because I might be able to talk about my accessibility needs a little bit easier being a white person than someone who comes from a culture where a lot of people did grow up in families where it's like, oh, we're not going to kick you out if you're gay, like
Yes.
yes. Really differently. So
different cultures are less accepting of different things.
Exactly.
Different thresholds.
Exactly. And some cultures, and like I have Muslim friends who came out as queer and their parents were like, great, all right, awesome. Like, like there's so many variances of identities and religions, and even within religions. Like I come up from a hyper religious family. So even within that, you have like variances. So anyways, long story short, that's what I do. And then also building community is huge to me. So I'm a van lifer. I've been traveling from New York to California, and I'm about to go back there, and building community along the way, figuring out what that looks like. That's not hyper independent and whitewashed and colonialized. Like, what does community actually mean when we take away capitalism and patriarchy?
So you said something that I thought was really insightful about how you run Advocates Empowered. You said something along the lines of like, when you go into a company and you're not just going in and talking to them once, being like, hey, be more inclusive,
Right.
and then piecing out.
Right.
You're there, you're integrating
Yes.
yourself into their company, and you're helping them for, I think you told me 3 months.
Minimum 3
I was going to say, don't
Yes.
quote me on that.
Yeah. Wow.
But,
memory. Impressive. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Some podcast or something. It's like you have to do
That's relevant.
It's so funny. But yeah, so that I thought was really insightful, because you're trying to make real change. I
Yes.
think we've all been part of a company or an organization or a school that has a speaker come in and they have that speaker really hype up something that's awesome.
Yes.
Great ideas.
Yes.
And then they never do anything else with it. They
Yes.
send like a follow-up email or something,
Exactly.
and that's it.
Exactly.
And you made a point of pointing out that you do not do that. So I thought that was really great. You also, you can tell me a little bit more about this, but you said how you audit companies
Yes.
a lot of the time. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, so sessions, speaking engagements are fantastic for inspiration, for education at mass, for widespread like organizational announcements. Like, there's a time and a place for good speakers. It's one of the most it's one of the best things that you can do. And I do speaking engagements. I'm a great speaker. I love to talk. I love to teach people.
Join the club.
Exactly. But that to me is like an add-on. That is a bonus. That is not where you should begin. That is not a foundation. That's
not real change.
It's not real change. It's just getting people inspired, and then I make you cry. But then what? Like, what do you actually do? And when I first started Advocates Empowered, I mainly was doing speaking engagements, and then people would always be like, okay, but then how? And I can't answer that in an hour. I can't answer that in one session. So what I do is, when I'm consulting and working with companies, there's 2 parts. So there's an audit, an accessibility audit, where I essentially look at your employee experience from the time that you're hired to the time that you exit, and then looking at your policies, your guidelines, the way that you run your organization, and essentially go through every facet of your company, and then figure out where you can be more inclusive, what strategies, what things you can change to then be more accessible. And then folks ask me, like, why should we do this? Oh, there's so much documentation out there of why this is important. A statistic that's been going around a lot lately is an estimate of 85% of autistic adults are unemployed, which is accurate.
Abysmal.
Yeah, and it is abysmal, especially because, as we know, autistic humans are some of the smartest people out there. But there's also companies are also only thinking about, like, when I see accessibility, people, they're talking about those who have like ADHD and are a little autistic. What about people who cannot speak? What about people who cannot, like, you use augmented assisted devices? What
My
about
daughter has one.
yeah, like, how do you include an office environment where people like that can succeed? A lot of the times people are only focusing on people who fall into the socially acceptable and slightly outside of it, because we don't want to be uncomfortable and we don't want to unlearn. Because since American society loves to take children with disabilities and remove them from the classroom and take them into a different learning environment, we never get the chance to have community in schools and in our environment unless it's very intentional. A lot of times they are removed from, for quote unquote, the good reasons, right? It's like for intensive intervention or whatever, but then there's no intention to then bring those children back into the community or even like keep them in their first place. But that's on teacher rant. Like we like to stick with people that we know and that match us as closely as possible. And then when we have to come out of that bubble, it is uncomfortable. That's the work.
Yep.
That's the work, right? And so then I go audit. I help you understand like where you can be more inclusive for all brains, all bodies, all backgrounds, not just the ones that make you comfortable. And then once we do that, now actually what I'll do is I'll take that roadmap and I will implement it for you. I will actually do it. So essentially I'm a program manager for 3 months and then I implement the roadmap. I do trainings with managers. I train marketing teams, train and do like HR and then in that I also do sessions. So like in the implementation partnership, I am doing session-wide stuff of this is what we're working on. This is how we're holding ourselves accountable to accessibility. This is what you can expect of us. Do you have any questions? Do you have any ideas? Let's build this company together. So essentially, if I've done my job well, in 3 to 6 months, I can bounce because it has been integrated into your culture. It has been integrated into the way that you have done things so that you won't need me anymore. A lot of companies are hiring accessibility specialists and consultants as full-time roles. So for those who aren't able or ready to kind of make that jump, this is a great way to do it. But yeah, people like Microsoft have whole neurodiversity hiring programs. There was a whole study done by Disability In and companies who were inclusive of those with disabilities saw 2 times more revenue income, like net revenue. The neurodiverse teams are considered 30% more productive. Right? So like creating accessibility, because we know we live in a capitalistic environment, we have to tie it back to the dollar.
It always comes back
to the dollar. It actually does. And then there's the curb effect, right? Like when we make it something accessible for people with disabilities, it makes life better for everyone. Keyboards, texting, your phone buzzing. These are all things that were created for accessibility purposes. So
even things like one of I think the most common one that companies implement because it's a law, but 2 that people don't realize they use and it would negatively affect them is wheelchair ramps. So we all see wheelchair ramps. We know what they're for. We know they're for wheelchair ramps. I'm still going to push a trolley up it. I'm still going to push my shopping cart up it, my kid's wagon, my stroller. We all use them, and our lives would all be slightly inconvenienced without them.
And we also know that the disability community is one of the only minorities that you can join at any time.
My favorite thing to say. Yep.
Right? So like,
and if we live long enough, we all will join it.
Exactly.
We will.
So if advocating for accessibility and disability rights is just advocating for your future self.
Yep, absolutely. It doesn't negatively affect anybody. I love to say that, yes. I will yell that from the rooftops to anybody that will listen.
Yeah.
I'll be the old man yelling at the cloud, but
Yeah.
except with disability rights.
Exactly. Yeah.
The human rights, everybody needs that.
Exactly. So that's what I focus on. But at the end of the day, again, it's all coming back to, so my 3 tenets are universal design. So that's what I like focus on, disability justice and intersectionality. So those are the 3, like the 3 founding stones of what I built myself around.
Yes. So actually, I wanted to ask you about those. Yeah. I love those. One of them, though, I think is not as commonly known of a term.
Yes.
Which is disability justice.
Yes.
So that's one of your 3 tenets. Universal design and inclusivity.
Intersectionality.
Yep. So sorry, I forgot what it was immediately.
All good.
Those are things that everybody hopefully is at least aware of.
Mm-hmm. People are not, which is okay.
I am in an echo chamber.
I know. That's how I feel about being queer sometimes. When I go leave, I'm like, wait, there's straight people.
In Eugene, Oregon, I'm like, oh, you want off of me? I'm like, people drink dairy? Ew. So why don't you tell us about disability justice, though, first? How would you define that, how you implement it, what it looks like?
Yes. So disability justice are 10 foundational principles that were developed by queer disabled people of color.
Hell yeah.
Yes. And so they are 10 principles that those are kind of like my value system. So there's a lot of them, so I won't go through all of them. But we've heard the nothing for us without us. Basically, disability justice is the 10 foundational principles built by them. And so these are a lot of my personal values that I live my life by, and ground my work in. So definitely would go recommend taking a look at those. Again, that's a whole, I have a whole, you can come to a session about disability justice, I have a whole topic about it. But yes, would definitely recommend going and doing a deep dive of those 10 principles.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. And then,
universal design.
So why don't you tell us about universal design?
Yes. Universal design is the principle of designing spaces so that they are the most accessible to as many people as possible, to the furthest extent possible, so that individual accommodations are not required. So when you build a building that has stairs at the entryway, that is not universal design, because the population, like, it is not usable by all people to the furthest extent. When the company I used to work for bought a whole new set of mugs, they bought mugs that had tiny little handles so that you could only probably like put one finger through. That is not universal design. People with early onset arthritis can't hold cups like that. People that have joint issues, right? And so like it's the little things. So it's basically, it's designing. There's universal design for learning and universal design for environments, like spaces and things like that. So
parks, community areas, malls.
Exactly. Like, and then universal design for learning is, am I presenting things in a kinesthetic and a visual and an oral way so that all learners can access what I am trying to teach. So universal design for learning is something very, very familiar with from my teaching, something I studied a lot. And then universal design for environments and for things like that is something that has been my ongoing learning. But yes, essentially it is when we're thinking about an event, a meeting, a new process, a new design, are we thinking about every employee and every need with their culture, with their way their brain works, with what their body needs? Are we thinking about everyone? And the way you do that is by ensuring, because people are like, well, how are we supposed to know what everyone needs? Go do an audit of your executive leadership and your managers. And if you do not have a representation across all boards of different bodies, backgrounds, ethnicities, religions, body types, sexual orientations, you're never going to know. And a lot of times when you look across companies, the executive leadership were mostly white, able-bodied, a lot of times men, many times straight.
Yeah. So, a lot of times when I find myself frustrated that somebody said something, did something, posted something that I find offensive, I try to give some grace by thinking, you don't know what you don't know. So I'm like, did this person mean to be offensive? Which, of course, people do sometimes.
Right.
Or did they not know? Is that a blind spot?
Right.
I definitely have blind spots. 4 years ago, was not even in the disability community. I knew nothing about Down syndrome. Like, I didn't know anything about vision loss. I didn't know anything about traumatic brain injuries. You know, these things, feeding tubes, none of it. These are all things that I knew nothing about. And now I could talk to you about it in my sleep. I probably do. Ask my husband. I don't know. But, like, you know, I didn't know. So I'm like, do these people not know? And that same goes for a company. If everybody that is running a company, an organization, a school, a program, a nonprofit, anything, all has the same background, then they don't know what they don't know, and they can't create spaces that are for people outside of that background.
Exactly. And that is where, you know, leadership has to be held accountable in that way. And people don't like to be uncomfortable, but that is where liberation to me is always found in community. When we can give each other the gift of storytelling, when we can give each other the gift of our humanity, and understanding that you are a person whose brain is different than mine, whose body feels different than mine, whose background is different than mine. Let me approach you with curiosity. Let me approach you with empathy, and not be thinking about, well, what accommodation do you need? But who are you as a person, and what can I do to make sure you can access what you need to thrive? There's a difference between accommodating someone, adjusting your leadership style, and modifying a job. Those are three very different things. And so what I help people learn is how to do that. So yeah, that's universal design. And then what was the other? Intersectionality, which is what we talked about.
Yeah.
None of us are one thing. That is essentially what intersectionality means. And the way that we experience the world comes with different privileges. It comes with different or lack thereof. I recently finished an amazing book, highly recommended. It's called How to Raise Anti-Racist Children by Britt Hawthorne. Amazing book. She's just incredible, and I just recently finished that. And one of my favorite quotes in the book, oh gosh, I hope I get it right, but essentially it says, like, we did not create the oppressive systems, but we are responsible for the amount of privilege and power that and how we use it, right? So like a lot of people are like, oh well, I'm a non-practicing white or whatever. I'm like, no, bitch, sorry, but you are white in a country in which you benefit from it. So I'm just because I'm trans and queer and disabled and neurodivergent, I am also white, and I'm also slender, right? And I'm also, for the most part, I do have chronic illness, but for the most part, able-bodied. And those things mean a lot in this country, so I can't excuse it and say, oh, I'm trans and like life is so hard. It is hard. I'm literally scared sometimes when I'm driving my van. I have to put on a wig and be a girl sometimes for my own safety. I've just started medically transitioning like 6 months ago. If you're watching, look at my mustache. You can see a little shadow. It's so great. But even with that, with my transition, if my goal is not to pass as a cis man, but when I do pass as a cis man, I actually have more privilege.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I'm not found out. Then if I'm found out, then I have less privilege.
Yeah. And it's interesting though. Yeah. I just wanted to say, you shouted out a book, and it reminded me of a kid's book that we have in our little home library. And I just Googled the author so that I could properly credit it. It's called Anti-Racist Baby.
I love this book.
It's so cute.
Yeah,
so my kids like it. And by Ibram X. Kendi. I hope I'm saying that right. So I just wanted to shout out that book as well, because a lot of my listeners are parents of younger kids.
Yes.
That is an accessible, cute little, appropriate for kids book.
I love it.
The other one's like a novel. So that one maybe isn't for story time.
Yeah.
But anyways. Awesome. Yeah. So I think that those are 3 great tenets for anybody who wants to advocate in the disability community to really be aware of. Because, like we've basically been talking about this whole time, it all benefits all of us. None of that is going to hurt you. I think that's something that's important, that lately, especially in the climate of the world, the U.S. specifically. I don't really talk about politics on this podcast, but something that people are struggling with is that, like, if you give something to somebody, you're not taking away from yourself. So, like, if you extend accommodations to other people, it doesn't hurt you.
Exactly.
It's just something that helps somebody else.
It might make you uncomfortable.
And that's
But there is a difference between danger and discomfort.
I like that.
And white people especially don't have a lot of resilience because we have not had to face a lot of discomfort in this country. So when people like myself are like, hey, you have some work to do, or like, hey, please put your pronouns in your signature, or hey, can we please like not use these terms that are very ableist in our workplace, that is not dangerous to you. It will make you feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price that we have to pay for equity. I will lose power if I truly believe that I want accessibility for all, because able-bodied people and white people, we just have too much of it. We have to give some of it up. And that's really uncomfortable, and it's not fun, but but people often think about that as such a difficult thing because they're not in community. And when you're in community and you have friends and family and neighbors that you love that have disabilities, it's so much easier to vote for them. It's so much easier to give up your own power for them. It is so much easier to sacrifice and say, I don't want to go help this person run an errand at the store, but I'm going to, because being part of community is uncomfortable sometimes. And so that's the answer to me for so much is community and belonging and storytelling and having people around you that are different than what you know, so that you can open your eyes and open your ears to inclusion, right?
Yeah.
That is the inclusion effect, is being in community. And so Advocates Empowered is actually in December launching a community space, which I'm really, really excited about. And one of my big questions that I've always asked as a kid who grew up being not, I wouldn't say excluded, but stood out a lot, and didn't really fit in. I was very neurodivergent. I don't know how they didn't see it. It's because my traits are traits that usually show up in boys, and until I knew I was trans, I didn't know I was autistic.
Interesting. That makes sense.
Autism was only studied in white men, as we know, until like the 1980s. So a lot of times autistic traits, trans people don't catch it because their autistic traits are actually showing up in the gender that they really are and not the gender that they have been put into a box. So my autistic traits are more male leaning. It's crazy. Yeah, so we're starting a community. As I've been traveling across the US, so many community spaces are not accessible to people with disabilities, to people who are neurodivergent. Like a lot of people, when they're like, we're gonna get together a community, they go to a bar, or they go to a place that has like lots of flashing lights and loud music, or they go to a place that they don't check for wheelchair ramp accessibility, or like, can everyone enjoy this environment and this experience? What about people who don't drink? What about people who are trying to stop drinking alcohol? Like, I don't want to put them in an environment where they feel like they have to drink in order to socialize. Anyways, so as I'm traveling, I'm helping bring people together in the cities that I visit in my van, and then we have an online community. So then they can come into the online community and then find each other IRL in real life. And then I help resource them. How do we actually build community that is not hyper individualistic, that is not steeped in patriarchy, colonialistic thoughts, but is actually showing up for each other. So we're going to do things like skill swap, where people can come and share their skills and for free. So I'm going to do one on health insurance because I'm really, really good at health insurance. So just come learn how to pick health insurance plans. That's community. That's reciprocity. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be really fun. There's lots of cool things that we're working on. So
I love that. Something that really is often talked about in my space that I take up a lot of space in. that was a jumble. But in disability parenting advocacy specifically, is that as a mom, you're told, as a parent really, but especially moms, you're told that you need a village. It takes a village. But when your child has different needs, you don't always have a village.
Yes.
I don't have the option of putting Addie, or I didn't have the option of putting Addie in a daycare that I felt could safely handle her medical needs. I don't have the option of meeting my friends just anywhere for play dates because it might not be safe for her. And I think that a lot of, I know for a fact, have leaned more towards friends who have kids in similar situations, I guess, who have medical or disability needs. And I've kind of just naturally, not really in a malicious way, distance myself from friends who have very neurotypical children who maybe aren't doing the work to see that I'm doing a different kind of parenting. And it's really, you have to have a community. Like you have to, it's important. Yes. And if you don't, you're going to struggle. And that is in all aspects of life. Like health insurance is so important. And then I bet somebody else is really great at balancing a budget, like teaching you how to balance a budget or something.
Or like your hyper interests, photography, just tell me about giraffes. If that's what you've been like hyper interested in for a month, autistic people love to learn. Come tell me about giraffes. I really would love to know and learn more about giraffes. Like, I just want people to feel that they have a space to be them authentically themselves, like ask for what they need, build community in that way. Because you're right, disabled people often end up in a little bubble because there's not spaces for inclusion and listening to each other's stories, and people again don't want to do the uncomfortable thing of, oh, I have to actually think about an accessible place to invite Anna for a play date, and actually have to call ahead and ask XYZ, and like that's interrupting my peace. Like, and I'm just like, oh, that's community. That is community. It is being inconvenienced. That is what we do. We inconvenience ourselves for each other.
Yes.
Not at the expense of ourselves,
but to help somebody else.
But in times of
absolutely. So how do you think that non-disabled allies, whoever, friends, family, neighbors, work associates, anybody, can be more effective in advocating for accessibility and for inclusion?
That is such a good question, and boy howdy. I think, I have the same thoughts and questions about everything, about that question for everything. Like, how can I be more inclusive, and more, advocating? And going back to Britt Hawthorne, she has a great breaking down of of moving from an ally to an accomplice. And what's the difference?
I like that verbiage.
Exactly. And so the moving an ally is someone who has, they think certain ways, right? So yes, I support queer people. Yes, I support disabled people. Yes, I support people of color, whatever. An accomplice, and there's one in between, I can't remember, but basically moving into where you are actually, your body and your actions are matching what you're saying. So when you become an accomplice, you realize that a person of color does not have the luxury of putting down that weight, and so neither will you. A person who is disabled does not have the luxury of becoming able-bodied, so you do not either. It's literally constantly putting that in the front of your mind, and how would I act, and what choice would I make right now if this person was right next to me, or if I was that person, right? So it's small things, right? One thing that I'm really trying to do, and I know I've already even messed it up in this podcast, I'm really trying to get rid of the word crazy in my vocabulary.
That's so funny that you say that. You know what I've been trying to get rid of is the word stupid. It's steeped in ableism, and I don't call people stupid, absolutely, but
that's stupid.
Exactly. Yeah. Or I knock over a cup, and I'm like, oh, stupid cup, or I was in a stupid place.
Right.
And it's kind of, what actually made me realize how not nice that word is my 4-year-old repeated it. And I was like, that sounded nasty. Like, that's so mean. Like, I'm not a strict parent. Like, he has said an F-bomb or two. Oh, and like, I'm not those kind of parents. Right. Like, he's having a Pink Pony Club themed 5th birthday party. Like, he is an icon. And Pink Pony Birthday Club. Yep.
Yes.
He knows every word to the song.
I love him.
So funny.
I love him.
Anyways,
I'm not even mad at him. I don't even know his name, but
he's hilarious. He's such a funny kid. But anyways, we are very open parents, is my point.
Right.
And so he said stupid, and I was like, that sounds so bad.
Yeah.
Then I was like thinking about it, and I was like, I shouldn't. I get online and talk every day about disability advocacy. I shouldn't be perpetuating that word. And crazy is exact same.
Yeah.
Exact same.
And so it could be as simple as that, like watching the words that I'm saying, right? But also being an accomplice also looks like being at work and being in a position of power and someone's making a decision saying, I always like to, when I'm challenging people, ask open-ended questions that they can arrive to the answer themselves. Have you thought about like how this policy will affect people with disabilities? Not, well, have you thought about James and his wheelchair and how this is going to affect him, right? Like when we're pointing people out, when we're doing, right? But like using any form of privilege that you have to highlight the experiences of the global majority, to highlight the experiences of those with disabilities, to highlight the experiences and not putting that weight down, constantly thinking, how will this affect people with disabilities? How will this hurt them? And using your voice to speak out. Hey, you know what? That's actually not a phrase that I'm comfortable hearing, and I would appreciate it if you didn't say that in front of me. Actually, that's not correct. Disabled people, blah, 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 blah. Actually, right? You like actually using your voice and stepping in and saying something. If you're at work and again, like people are making policies that you know are going to hurt people with disabilities, say something about it. And so I would say, you know, using your power, using your privilege, using your social media, right? Like be active on, I know a lot of people are like, well, I go on social media to like see my friends and okay, fine. Then where are you doing something, right? Because like highlighting on social media is great for education, but it's not actually going to change anything. It's just great for sharing. Like, are you voting? Are you going to your town hall meeting?
Today's election day.
Today's election day.
This won't come out today.
Yeah.
November 4th was election day.
Yeah,
I hope
I'm
if you live in a place where you can vote, you do. So if you have any special elections happening today. Prop 50.
Please don't fail us.
If Zoran Mamdani does not get elected,
I'm gonna cry.
This world also knows how to sing My Name is Mamdani. Mamdani. He is an icon.
I love him so much. I am considering moving back to New York just for him.
Yeah,
to be a part of his campaign.
His campaign has been amazing. It's my first bachelor's degree is in marketing, and his campaign has been
whoever is on his campaign marketing is just
people will write case studies about it. It will be taught.
So good. It's so good. He is giving people accessible ways to be involved in politics that are actually creating community, and that's like
it's great. Anyways. Yes, but anyways, I forgot what even got us on that topic. But making change in your community.
Yes, making change. It looks like knowing your neighbors. It looks like knocking on the door and saying, "Hi, I live right here. Here's my number in case you need anything. Would you like to come over for dinner next week?" It looks like expanding your social group of friends, right? Like I recently went to a party that was supposed to be super inclusive. It was like a queer party. Trans people were there. It was awesome. Like just all kinds of spectrum of gender. Super, super diverse. Like maybe 30 people. And I looked around and there was like one Black person there. And I was like...
Was it here in Oregon?
No.
Oh,
it was in Sacramento. It was in Sacramento. And Sacramento is not very white. Like it does have white people.
Well, yeah.
Right. But like it's a diverse city. And then I remember like being very curious about that. And I came to find out the reason is because the party planner people don't have any Black friends. If you live in a city that has Black people and you don't have Black friends and you are white, then that's one way you can help community, because like marginalized, disabled people, people of color, queer people, trans people, expand your circle. Be a Pokemon. Always have your circle open to always be including more folks.
Always accepting new friends.
Yes, always. And sharing your story, right? Like that is the way that we build community, is we share our stories and we talk about our experiences so that people can understand, you know, like what we face. And that's more so for those with disabilities, and that takes a lot of courage, and self-advocacy is a whole other thing. But yeah.
Awesome. I love that. If you could change...
Oh, and one more thing.
Go for it.
Go look at your bookshelf and look at your author list.
Oh.
And if all of them are white, able-bodied people, redo your library. Make sure that you're reading books written by disabled people, that you're reading books written by Black people, that you're reading books written by parents, that you're reading books written by people you don't even agree with. Like, learn to expand the discomfort, right? Like, I like to read books with people that, like, I don't agree about everything, because like, there's some things, like, morally or, like, ethically, for me, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna go read Andrew Cuomo's book, like, but there are some friends that, like, think a little bit differently than me, and I need to make space for that discomfort. So go take a look at your books, and if you are reading books by authors that all look the same, go and expand your author list. Don't ask your Black friends. There are lots of Black people who have written books. Don't ask your disabled friends. There are lots of disabled people who have written books about it. So, yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And same goes if you have a library of children's books. We have lots and lots of children's books about, like I said, that anti-racist baby books.
If
You've got lots of books about disabilities. I'm happy to share lists of books. And I follow an Instagram account, and I don't know the at right now.
That teacher who does all the books?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Exactly.
I love that account.
I will find the name of that account and share it on my social media. She shares books that are based all around children who are deaf and blind, all around children who are from split households, all around children with Down syndrome, but in different niches. Yeah. And they're all great books. So definitely go follow her. Sorry, I can't remember your name.
And if you're also wanting to learn how to have conversations with your kids around people with disabilities, go read Raising Anti-Racist Children, because what Britt does is gives conversation starters and things that you can just switch racism for ableism or homophobia or whatever. Yeah. Like the sentence starters, and she has, like, all kinds of, like, crafts and, like, conversations that you can do to help your kids start to think about inclusion in that way. And you can do the same things when it comes to people of different sexual orientations or different body abilities or different brain neurotype makeup. So highly recommend it for that as well.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. And then I've got to wrap this up. I could talk to you forever, but
oh my god, we're already over in an hour. Oh my god.
Yes. I have to get my kids off the bus here in a few, but I'll ask one last question and then we can wrap things up. If you could change one thing about how society views disability, what would it be?
I would say that society in general, I think, views disability through the medical model. So there's different models of disability, and I think there's 7 or 8. But the medical model is the one that we mostly view disabilities, which is a disability is something that is wrong with the person and needs to be treated. But I think if we could collectively move towards something like the social identity movement, which says that disability is a part of your identity, it is a part of who you are, but also the social model says that society is actually causing the disabilities. For it is a mixture of both. I am disabled in these ways, but also disability is mostly caused because of societal choices that are causing a lack of access. And so we actually need to turn it around towards us as individuals and towards society, for the responsibility to be on us to create spaces that are accessible and to remove barriers for people with disabilities. So yeah, I would say stop thinking about disability from the medical model of a point of view of this is just something that needs to be fixed and solved, into more of like a social model of disability, which says that we are responsible for creating environments for people to thrive.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that is exactly how people think of disabilities a lot of times, Yeah. And the onus isn't on the disabled person to change to fit into what you're comfortable with. Exactly. So I think that's awesome.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, everybody that's listening, if you made it this far, please follow along. Leave me 5 stars. Share this podcast with a friend or two. Also follow along on social media. My TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook are all at The Inclusion Effect. Kris, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find my personal website is keepingupwithkris.com. That'll have links to all of my Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of those. And then my company is advocatesempowered.com. So if you are looking more so for those services and things like that, you can find both of those. Either one of those two websites, you can find me there.
Awesome. And I'll link those in the show notes as well. Thank you so much to everyone for helping me build this community of passionate advocates. I'll talk to you next week.
Yay, bye.